everyone, it's awesome to be back at StartCon. Last year was really exciting to be here, and when they invited me and gave me an opportunity to come back, I was thrilled to jump on it. So today I'm going to be talking about setting and achieving high-impact goals and how that's critical for driving long-term growth in your business. But before I get started with that, I'm going to tell a little story about where another place where I've set goals and had effective results because of goals. So when I reached my 30s, I, like a lot of guys, started to put on pounds and thought, everybody told me you've got to eat better, you need to exercise, and it really didn't work very well. I tried to do it, kind of went through the motions, and then one day I got a call from my doctor, and he told me that I had bladder cancer. Scared the crap out of me. I'm fine now, the bladder cancer's gone, but it caused me to start taking my health really seriously. And so at that point, I committed, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to really follow a process, set goals, and over the next 6 weeks, I was able to drop 30 pounds, and I kept the weight off for many years after that. I've put a few pounds on since then, and at least I know how to take them off if I need to. But it's really the same process for losing weight, and the same challenges of that is really similar to how growth works in startups, where if you commit to a process, you set goals, you can start to drive long-term sustainable growth in a company, and that's really important for being able to build a valuable business over time. So what we're going to talk about today is how goals actually help you drive sustainable growth, how to set the right goals, how to pick the right goals that are really high leverage goals that actually are going to impact growth in the long term, and then finally a process for achieving your growth goals. So let's start with what happens when you don't set goals. If you don't set goals, your whole team starts to get out of sync. And so I actually had recently at my company, we try to do a lot of things right. We know what we're supposed to do, but we're not perfect. That's a work in progress for everybody. And I had one of the guys on my team tell me that, hey, that banner that I committed to getting done a couple of weeks ago? It's finally done. Sorry it took so long. I had a hard time getting the designer's time to create the banner, but it's finally done. And I had to tell him, we don't need the banner anymore. That was attached to a different goal that we were focused on at the time. And now, since then, we've created a different banner. That banner's already live, and we don't need that banner anymore. So what happened? He wasted his time. He got discouraged and frustrated that he finally got something done, and it didn't even matter. He wasted the designer's time, which was a really tight resource that, the reason it took so long was because he couldn't get the time of the designer, and then he wasted that person's time. And so that's pretty typical, that basically when people are out of sync, you start wasting resources, wasting time, and the business starts to grind to a halt, and growth really plateaus. And so the benefit of actually setting the right goals are that it keeps the team focused on really high leverage opportunities in the business. And when everybody's focused on the same goals, they're much more likely to be achieved. And when they're achieved, everybody can celebrate that accomplishment. It slows down on burnout, which happens a lot of times in growth. If you're just pushing that rock up the hill year after year, it gets pretty overwhelming. So being able to set these short-term goals and achieve them, it gives that adrenaline rush that keeps people excited about the process. Growth should be fun, growth should be exciting, and setting goals helps to make that happen and helps the team to avoid burnout. And when you do that, you start to drive sustainable growth in a business. So kind of the best way to understand this is to look at something that happened when I was at LogMeIn. When we started trying to grow the business, we validated that people actually liked the product, and I had a couple of people on my team, and we said, okay, let's go out and start trying to grow this business. And it actually worked. We bought some ads and quickly got to 1,000 plus, couple thousand people a day signing up for the product. I actually got notes from my VCs saying, hey, awesome job. This is great to see all those signups. But what I found was that I had a really hard time growing beyond that initial $10,000 a month. When I tried to scale beyond that, the money was being wasted. And so we stepped back and we said, why is it so hard to scale this spend? When we stepped back, we realized that majority of people who were signing up were never actually using the product. And if they didn't use the product, they weren't going to buy the product. If They didn't use the product. They weren't going to spread positive word of mouth about the product. In fact, they were probably going to spread negative word of mouth because they just wasted their time trying to use a product that they never actually used. And so we basically stepped back. I connected with the CEO, and we decided for the next foreseeable future, for the next few weeks at least, or several weeks, we're going to focus on trying to get people who sign up to actually use the product. And it wasn't just a growth team or a marketing team thing. It was literally all of developers, all of the product people, everybody focused on trying to solve this acquisition problem. And we tested new installers. We did all kinds of tests all the way through, and we were able to get about a 10x increase in the number of people who signed up and actually used the product. So no new money being spent, but a 10x increase in people who use the product. And so what did that mean to actually our ability to grow the business? Now we went out, we tried the same channels where we were banging our heads against the wall trying to be creative about new ways to grow the business. When we tried the exact same channels, no new creativity, they scaled to over $1 million a month, and we had a positive return on investment on those dollars. We ran the business as a cash flow positive business until the IPO, and it's now a $2.5 billion business, and I'm certain we wouldn't have been able to do any of that if we didn't identify the highest leverage opportunity and have the team focus in trying to accomplish that. So really powerful when you identify the right goals and get the team focused on them. It's super powerful. So there's really 4 keys to achieving goals once you've kind of defined what your high impact goals are. So the first is to actually pick the right goal, and then to communicate the specifics around the goal. So I'm gonna go through and explain how to do each of these in a minute. The third is to actually focus your resources on achieving the goal, and then finally to use a proven process for achieving the goal. So this proven growth hacking process, I'll take you guys through what that looks like. So the first is finding the right high-impact goals. It's really, I just gave you an example with LogMeIn. You guys see, why can't I spend money effectively to grow this business? Well, most people who we're paying to acquire, to sign up for our product aren't using it. We're not getting that return on investment. So we were able to identify that really high leverage point in the business. And we knew solving that activation problem was going to support our broader goal of allowing us to spend a lot of money cost effectively to get really big reach and acquire a lot of customers on the product and help people with the problem of trying to get information that's on a remote computer and stay productive and effective. So we mapped it to our broader goals. It supported our broader mission. We focused on the really high leverage opportunities, and then we focus on solving problems. And so that's the same thing that you should do when you're setting your goals. Just make sure that you're setting these short-term goals around these high leverage opportunities and that they map to your broader goals, broader objectives of the business. The second is, once you've actually defined the goal, you need to share it with your team and give your team context on why that goal is important. So if you don't actually define the goal, so that was really the problem that I talked about on my team, where I had someone building a banner or creating a banner that turned out to be a waste of time. It wasn't his fault. It was my fault for not making sure that he was plugged in on what the latest objective is and how that had changed. And so communicating your objectives is really important, and you have to define them in the first place. So what is the starting point? Where do you want to take that number to, and what's the time frame for getting there? So generally what I recommend on the time frame is anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 weeks. If it gets longer than that, then it's probably kind of a broader goal where you should have multiple sub goals that are mapping up to it. So this presentation is really about these short-term 2 to 6 week goals that are really important for propelling the business forward. Once you've defined the goals and communicated the goals, then you need to really decide how many goals should we have. So a good rule of thumb there is that however many dedicated people you have on your team, on your growth and marketing, potentially you could roll sales in there, you shouldn't have more goals than you have dedicated people. So maybe if you're really small, you only have one person, then just have one goal. But if you have 5 or 10 people, then maybe you want to have 3 to 5 goals. You don't want to really have more than the number of people, because it's all about focus. And if you're trying to do too much, you're not focusing. So you need to have a narrow focus, and you want to make sure that each goal has an owner assigned to that goal, and that owner actually believes that accomplishing that goal is possible, and they're passionate about accomplishing the goal, and that another recommendation is that you really don't put a direct financial incentive on achieving that short-term goal. You can put financial incentives around like annual goals or even maybe quarterly goals, but these short-term goals, if you put direct financial incentives, what's going to happen is that they're going to try to sandbag them, and there's a big debate on how low can we make the goal so that I can get my financial reward for accomplishing it. So it's just better not to try to put financial incentives here. And then this person who owns the goal is really responsible for trying to get everybody in the company rallied around achieving the goal. So it's not up to them to go out and accomplish it on their own. They should be connecting with the different people throughout the company. And so even if your support people or your product people or your developers or designers don't feel like they're part of the growth team or growth process, they are. They just don't know it. They're not quantifying their efforts, but their efforts are somehow impacting growth in the business. So it's really important to reach out and connect with them and help them understand the importance of the goal and try to help you solve the goal. So one example from my team recently was I had a similar activation challenge we have a SaaS product with GrowthHackers, and we had a similar activation challenge that we had in the LogMeIn days, and I looked at where our activation number was and realized that it should be a lot higher than that. And so I set a goal of we're going to increase it 400% in 30 days. And of course, my executive team said, "You're crazy. That's not possible." And probably the most vocal person on the team was our VP of engineering, who just said, "There's no way we can get a 400% increase in activation in 30 days." And so rather than saying, "Yes, we can, we're going to do it," I said, "Okay, so what do you think's possible?" And he said, "It's going to take 6 weeks." Okay, 6 weeks, that's fine. If we get 400% in 6 weeks, I'm okay with that. So that little bit of negotiation, we just extended the time frame a bit. What's really cool is that later that day, he came back to me and said, "I've been thinking a lot about that goal, and we actually, I think I've got a way to solve it, and I built a little prototype of a new onboarding approach that I think will help us solve that goal. And here, let me show you this clickable prototype." And it turned out that it was awesome. He's like, "I feel like this is kind of cheating, but let's what do you think?" And I said, "Yeah, let's build it." And so it took maybe a week or two to get it live, but within 3 weeks, we had it live. We had enough numbers through it where we actually had accomplished the goal in less time than they thought. And this was really the first time that my VP of engineering actually had contributed to the growth process. And so you never know where great ideas are going to come from. And when you boil things down to a problem that needs to be solved, a lot of times engineers in particular are really good problem solvers. So it was awesome to get him plugged into that. So basically, once you've got the team plugged in about the objective and they know what needs to be accomplished, then you're following a growth hacking process to achieve that objective. So growth hacking process is pretty straightforward. It's really similar across a lot of companies. So maybe you have a company that does it slightly differently, but ultimately, Uber, Facebook, Pinterest, each of these companies has something that looks like this, and it's not new. It's really based on the scientific process that's been around for a long time. You're doing some analysis, you're creating hypotheses around how you think you can improve the situation, you're running tests. It's basically a process that's been around for a long time, but you just need to be really scientific about it. So we'll jump into each one of these a little more deeply. So the first, analyze the situation. So we already talked about analysis on a big level to try to pick the right goal. Now, within that goal, you want to analyze what's going on. Why aren't people activating? Or maybe you've set a goal around, I want Facebook to become a channel that starts to refer people to us. So why aren't people coming from Facebook? Do our users actually use Facebook? Whatever it is, you want to do some research around there, try to figure out statistically what's happening, quantitatively what's happening, but also qualitatively. Why are people doing what you want them to do? Why are they not doing what you want them to do. And with that information, you can start to just understand the situation a lot better, and you can combine those for insights. So building on the example I mentioned earlier about LogMeIn, where we had this big activation issue. We had all these people signing up and very few people using the product. One of the specific areas that we focused on was that we had about a 90% drop-off rate after people signed up at the download step. So if they weren't downloading the software, they couldn't do anything. And it seemed really strange to us that they would sign up, they'd fill out a form, and then they wouldn't download the software. And so first, we were still kind of learning a lot of this stuff. So first, we just started testing. Like, let's start testing different ways to lay out that page. And they must not see the download button, so let's make it big. Let's make it red. Let's move things around a little bit. And it really didn't work very well. But then we just asked them, why did you sign up and not download the software? And we didn't need very many answers to start to hone in on what was going on. People didn't believe the software was free. Well, that was counterintuitive. Like, I don't think we would have guessed that. So what we did on the next test, once we knew they didn't believe it was free, we just basically gave them a choice. Download free version of software or download trial of paid software. And we pre-checked the free version, and that next test gave us a 300% improvement on our download rate at that step. So I don't think we would have come up with that with random testing. We had to understand the situation, analyze the situation. So once you've analyzed the situation, then it's all about generating ideas for solving the problem. So rarely do I ever own a goal on my team. I like to have other people own the goals, and then I can be a partner in helping them achieve their goals. So I like to do a weekly brainstorming session with each person who's got an objective on my team, where we're just breaking down the information and trying to figure out what are some tests that we could run, what are some ideas of ways to solve it. And a lot of times it means, what's truly going on? If we're trying to fix a retention problem, why the heck would people actually come back? And let's write down our assumptions around that, and let's see if we can do some research when someone actually comes back, find out if we were right, and just try to hone in on what the situation is, and then generate ideas around that information. And so those weekly brainstorming sessions are really good. I do multiple of those. It's my chance as a CEO to actually mentor and really work with team members to help accomplish these goals that are super important to our overall business, but they like that one-on-one time as well. And then we're encouraging anyone on the team to submit ideas. So just like what I had talked about with our VP of engineering, we talked about the problem. It wasn't through a brainstorming session. On his own, he went back and put together this prototype of an idea. And so he didn't need to sit in a brainstorming session. He just came up with that on his own and built it. And I think that's the thing with ideas. You never know when you're going to have them. And so you just kind of want to always be in that idea mode where you can capture anything that you think might solve the problem. So when you're creating ideas, it's really important that you're not creating ideas where it's just like a random half-thought-out idea, but instead, again, back to the scientific process. You're actually building an experiment doc. You're defining, what is my hypothesis? Why do I think this is going to work? Any of the data that you've collected around quantitatively what's happening, qualitatively what's happening, attach all of that to the experiment doc. And then we like to have this scoring system that we call the ICE score. And we're essentially saying, if this works, what's the potential impact? Is this going to be a game-changing potential experiment, or is it something that's just going to be marginal and incremental? And it's okay sometimes if the potential outcome isn't huge. If you're really confident it's going to work and it's super easy to do, then that's fine. And so that's really what the other two are scoring confidence. How likely is it going to work? Do I have a lot of research that supports this is likely to work? And then how easy is it to run the test? And if it scores well on impact, scores well on confidence, and scores well on ease, then that's probably a pretty good one to run. But sometimes you know that you're really having a hard time getting resources, so maybe you want to focus on just really easy things to do. Because at the end of the day, testing is where you get most of your learning. So testing is super important. When you get into your weekly growth meeting, that's where you start prioritizing what you actually are going to run. So in the weekly growth meeting, you're looking at all of the objectives, and you're trying to decide which tests are we going to run for each of these objectives. So what you want to do going up to that meeting is use this ICE score to actually figure out what you want to nominate. So if the person who owns the goal, they should be nominating ideas specifically for their goal. Other people on the team can nominate any of the ideas that relate to any of the goals that you're pursuing. But in a given week, you want to run 3 to 5 tests, depending on your team size, and you want to try to balance those across your key objectives. So one quick note is that when you are using ICE, this ICE scoring methodology, sometimes people overthink it, and they get into their growth meetings, and they start debating what should that ICE score be. It's just for directionally steering you toward thinking about impact and how easy and how confident. Like, don't overthink it. Just use ICE to figure out what you want to nominate. But in our weekly growth meetings, we never talk about ICE again. It's really just on an individual level. I'm looking at, for this objective, how do these ideas stack up against each other? And then from there, picking which things do I want to nominate to run. So once you've decided the tests that you're going to run, then you need to run those tests. And what you want to do is make sure that you're actually using a product like Optimizely or Visual Website Optimizer for things on your website that you're testing, or Unbounce, or anything that makes it easier to run tests. It's good to use those tools. In a channel, it tends to be pretty quick. Sometimes you're going to do deeper things, like I talked about with LogMeIn, where we were testing installers, and you need to make bigger investments in that. But any tools that you can do to facilitate your testing is going to be important. And here's the reason, is that probably the biggest predictor of growth that I've found in companies is the number of tests per week that they're running. Basically, teams that are running 1 or 2 tests per month are rarely growing because they're not able to figure out what works and what doesn't work to drive growth. So when you run more tests, you learn more. And these are 2 examples. The first one is from Twitter, where Twitter, we know, has had some growth problems recently, but at the end of 2010, Twitter almost ground to a halt with their growth. And that was when they didn't have nearly as big numbers as they have today. So they shouldn't have been slowing down at that point, but they were only running 1 or 2 tests per month. And a new VP of product came in and said, we need to up our testing rate. He upped it to 10 tests per week. And very quickly, they recovered their growth rate and carried it on for a long time going forward. So I saw that data and said, I want to do that on my own team because we're not testing enough. And I said to my team, we need to run at least 3 tests per week. And we were probably only running, a test every other week, even though when I asked the team, oh yeah, we run lots of tests. We're super test driven. But when we actually tried to count how many tests we were running, it wasn't that many. So as soon as we started targeting 3 tests per week and holding ourselves accountable for running those tests, we turned the corner and went from 3 months of being flat to growing our community quite a bit. So testing is really important. So focus on your testing throughput. Once you've launched the test, then it comes down to actually analyzing the results. And it's really important to share what's working and what's not working. It's not all about only finding winning tests. Every test leads to learning. So every test is important. And when you communicate the results out, it makes everybody smarter. So on my team, people have this thought that analysts don't have ideas. They just look at numbers, and then you got the creative people. But on my team, our analyst is the person who's generated by far the most ideas on our team. And it's because he sees the results before anybody else does. And he's living in those results. And every time he runs analysis and sees what works and what doesn't work, then he comes up with another idea and another set of ideas to run. So might as well make everybody live in the data, everybody live in the learning, and you'll unlock a lot more ideas that way, and you'll really keep the key goals on people's minds. So that's really the process for achieving these goals. You're basically, until you get to the end of the period, you're repeating every single week this analyze, ideas, prioritize, test, and just keep pushing that through, and you'll make progress against the goals. If you pick the right goals, you'll be driving really good sustainable growth in your business. So key takeaways. Goal setting is absolutely critical for driving growth in your business. For driving sustainable growth in your business, goal setting helps you kind of connect goal to goal, if you're setting the right goals, you will drive your growth rate up more and more over time. Focus on those really high leverage goals, because if you don't take the time to figure out the right goals, then you're going to probably be frustrated when you hit the goals and it doesn't make a big difference in the big picture. So really focus on high leverage opportunities. Once you've set those goals, communicate them widely across the team, and then follow this growth hacking process to achieve the goals. If you do all of this, I think you'll see a big difference in how you sustainably grow your business. Thank you.